Okay, so these are people specifically that are involved with crimes against children, pedophiles, child trafficking, and also they are directly connected with the Clintons.
All right, guys, a special thanks to my patrons and a shout out to this video's sponsor, the Shepherd's Ancient Diet. It's the only biblically inspired step-by-step weight loss system that works to completely transform your body. What if you simply followed the nutritional recommendations found in the Bible, guys? Eating more foods that contain healthy fats. You could slow down the aging process, rejuvenate every cell in your body, and lose weight, all without stepping foot in the gym. Now, you can accomplish many things that will lead to a more healthful life without ever feeling hungry. Imagine cranking up your metabolism to where it's burning fat all the time when you sleep and when you're eating fulfilling, nutritious, delicious food. The idea for the Shepherd's Ancient Diet is from Christina Wilds, the creator of the Shepherd's Code. And for over 20 years, she's worked in fitness and nutrition, and she's never seen a single system, program, or diet that comes close to the life-transforming principles laid out in the Ancient Diet. So please watch the free video that I'll link below and find out how to use the Ancient Diet at theancientdiet.com. That's theancientdiet.com, where you can learn the biblical steps to weight loss. All right, guys, thanks for tuning in. This one is sure to be deemed not suitable for most advertisers by our friends at YouTube because it revolves around a very challenging topic, and that, of course, is human trafficking and child trafficking. My friend Corey Lynn is on. You know her from corysdigs.com. Corey, welcome.
Thanks. Good to see you, Sean.
Yeah, thanks for coming back on. And you know what? You and my friend Liz Crokin have a lot in common. You both have dedicated yourselves to exposing those who are involved in the most devious and satanic things imaginable, child trafficking among them. Your latest article posted on April 11th is titled, "Are Bill and Hilary Clinton Involved with Child Trafficking?" And of course, you've got your very important 4-part series titled Clinton's Shipwrecked on 10 Islands, and it revolves around nefarious things going on in the Caribbean. So, and let's just lead in with this reminder for people. Of course, our listeners are well aware of the fact that there are billions of dollars missing from Haiti. The relief funds that were raised after that devastating hurricane that went into the Clinton Foundation coffers basically disappeared. And to this day, people from Haiti still camp outside the Clinton Foundation headquarters in New York, protesting these people, begging for an investigation. But that's just the tip of the iceberg, isn't it?
It is. That is just the tip of the iceberg. And wait till you see all the money that's come in off of Big Pharma that's directly related to ICMEC, which is the International Missing Children or Missing and Exploited Children. You know, we have the national one, but then Hillary, of course, got involved with the international one.
Yeah, because she cares so much about children.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
You know what? Why don't we do this, Corey? In the interest of reminding people that things are happening, why don't we go to your latest article and let's read the list of some of the people who have now been indicted or taken down, arrested, involved in nefarious things. Because I love it when people continue to say nothing's happening. You know, right. I'll tune back in once the real arrests start happening. Critics say nothing's happening. Okay, well, how about this tweet from President Trump? I mentioned it in a recent video. President Obama's top White House lawyer, Gregory B. Craig, was indicted on Thursday on very serious charges. Trump says this is a really big story, but the fake news, New York Times, didn't even put it on page 1, rather buried it on page 16. In Washington Post, not much better. Tiny page 1. Obama's top lawyer.
Right.
Indicted. Why don't you take us through the list of so many other people who've been indicted?
Okay, so these are people specifically that are involved with crimes against children, pedophiles, or pedophiles rather, child trafficking. So, and also they are directly connected with the Clintons. So we have, of course, NXIVM.
So that's Keith Raniere, Allison Mack, the Bronfman woman.
Right. And Lauren Salzman, Nancy Salzman, Kathy Russell. So, and we've already had, we've already had 3 of them, I believe. 3 of them have already pled guilty. And Lauren Salzman just, like a week or 2 ago, I think it was a week ago, just admitted for harboring her own personal slave for 2 years. I mean, these people are sick. And in the superseding indictment on Raniere, it states, engage in sexually explicit conduct for the purpose of producing one or more visual depictions of such conduct, which visual depictions were produced and transmitted. So this is on a child. And then his co-defendants were aware of and facilitated Ranier's sexual relationships with two underage victims, a 15-year-old girl who was employed by Nancy Salzman and who 10 years later became Ranier's first-line slave in DOS, which DOS is this whole separate little private, secretive organization within NXIVM that gets into their whole pyramid of slaves and sex slaves. It's quite disgusting. So then we have Claire Bronfman, who recently fainted because of, I'm going to butcher his name, Mark, is it Garagos? Is that how you say that?
Garagos. He's a friend with Adam Carolla and a regular guest on Carolla's podcast. So I don't think Carolla's probably going to go there in any upcoming podcasts with Garagos. But Garagos is connected with a lot of these shady characters, including the creepy porn lawyer.
Right. His co-conspirator, Mike Levinati, who just, was it 26 counts? He was just indicted on 26 counts, I believe.
Yeah, I think he's facing counts in California and in New York for various reasons. I think the one in California is for embezzling money from his clients, more than $1 million.
Right. And then the one with where he was listed with Mark Garagos was on the extortion of Nike. So that'll be interesting to see played out here. But what's key in this is the fact that Claire Bronfman and Nancy Salzman were both members of the Clinton Global Initiative, which is by invite only, and they have to pay, they call it a donation, but it's annual, a minimum of $15,000 a year. So, and they're tied in with Richard Branson, and so I cover all of this in great detail in here. And it's also, we might as well just bring up Kirsten Gillibrand, because I think by now everyone knows about her father's involvement and her stepmom, and how NXIVM had 3 VIP tables at a Clinton Foundation fundraiser, and Kirsten was sitting at the table with Nancy Salzman. So these people are all tied together. And then we have the Podesta brothers. Now, they have not been charged on any crimes against children yet. However, Tony Podesta, as you know, was indicted and then given immunity by Mueller to testify against Paul Manafort. And they're all tied in with the whole Ukraine situation there. So we're waiting to see how that unravels. And all you have to do is look at his art. And you don't even have to say a word. Just look at his artwork.
Right.
And Tony Podesta, I did briefly go into Pizzagate on here, only to point out a few facts. The thing that infuriates me about this is that is a label that came up in the last, 2 to 3 years because of finding the emails in WikiLeaks and Comet Ping Pong and everything. And so what the media has done is they've taken that label and they've focused it all around Comet Ping Pong and John Podesta, making it seem like Pizzagate doesn't exist. Well, let's take the word Pizzagate out of it. This goes back 2 decades. This goes back on the dark web. I have a video in here. There's a teacher in Pennsylvania that has been teaching for 20 years sex ed to kids using pizza language. I have court documents in here on a case where an undercover spotted a guy on Craigslist who was seeking out women and their children that were into cheese pizza. This man just recently pled guilty. This is so my point is, let's just call it pedogate. Let's just relabel it as pedogate so that they'll stop squashing this. Pizza has been tied to pizza terms and visuals have been tied to sex and pedophilia for decades. So, and I have other examples in here and links to places on that. And then we have, let me scroll down.
Let me just say one thing while you're scrolling down. If you guys look at my tweets, any of my tweets related to pedophilia and exposing these people over the past year, I almost exclusively use the hashtag pedogate for that very reason. Corey, because the liars, the whores, and the mainstream media have tried to discredit all of the investigation into what was going on in Washington, D.C. and the related Alephantis businesses. They've tried to dismiss all of it as tinfoil hat conspiracy without ever addressing the coded language in the Podesta emails that were released to WikiLeaks thanks to whistleblower Seth Rich, who they then murdered. I think that's about as conclusive as anybody could state it. That's my personal belief. And if a real investigation was done, I think that's what it would show. Kim.com has offered Mueller the evidence that he says he has that proves Seth Rich was the leaker. And if it wasn't for Seth Rich, we wouldn't know about the coded language that John Podesta, used so often with he and his cohorts. And beyond that, I'd remind people that it was Andrew Breitbart, before anybody ever heard of Pizzagate or Comet Ping Pong. Breitbart was astounded that the world didn't know that John Podesta was a world-class underage sex slave op cover-upper defending unspeakable dregs. In his words. So Breitbart was way ahead of the game. You're right. This thing goes far back in time.
Right, exactly. And when he did an interview, I have that linked in here as well. I can't remember if it was it Rolling Stone? Well, at any rate, he did an interview, and he never addresses the emails. That's the thing. He never addresses the emails. It's just deny, deny, deny. So, and of course, Marina Abramovic and the spirit cooking, and I've got a video and some images in here. It's just repulsive stuff, And then also the Podesta group was connected in with Amber Reddy. This is such a web, I tell you. So Amber Reddy, they were basically the PR company covering media relations and building a campaign to promote Amber Reddy's cell phone technology. Now think of this, Sean. We're talking programs in phones that enable parents to create, store, and lock their children's profiles, alert profiles, into their wireless phones, so that if a child goes missing, the police can transmit the alert profile in minutes via Amber Alert. That's a lot of data stored on children across the nation, and we know how accessible cell phones are. So that in itself is alarming to me.
And another link, Laura Silsby, who was caught at the border of Haiti trying to traffic out, I forget what the number was, 33 children?
33. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, their magic number. She got caught at the border, and who came to her aid? The Clintons.
Yep.
But beyond that, where did Laura Silsby end up going to work? She went. Exactly. She's employed at a Amber Alert related software company, the name of which right now escapes me, but Laura Silsby Gaylor, I think she goes by Laura Gaylor now.
Right.
I'm going off memory here. Working for an Amber Alert related company.
Right.
When she was caught for child sex trafficking, folks, figure that out.
Right. And that was called Alert Sense. That's
right.
There. Yes. And so that's all tied together. Now, as of today's date, she's actually no longer there, but in 2015, she came back there. And when she got back to, is it Idaho or Utah?
I don't know.
I think it's Utah. It's Idaho. Because she was with a team of 9 other people, and 7 of them were from the Central Valley Baptist Church in Meridian, Idaho. So when she got back there, then in 2015, she gets this job over at Alert Sense. And so what's interesting is I grouped this together because I started noticing in 2009 was an interesting year. So the Clinton Global Initiative stated that since 2009, they have placed a particular focus on combating human trafficking. Now, the Polaris Project, who they were working with in 2009, and again in 2014, wait till you see what they did with them in 2014, is also a member of the Clinton Global Initiative. So in 2009, when the Podesta group partnered with Amber Reddy, in 2009, Laura Silsby was planning her alleged orphanage that she was going to set up in the Dominican Republic. And then in January 2010 is when she went down and ended up getting arrested for trafficking the 33 children, which of course, after Bill and Hilary stepped in, she managed to get that dropped to, what was that?
Yeah, I think she only
Sorry,
did 6 months.
so in depth. I can't remember every single detail, but it was, arranging irregular travel.
Yeah.
They reduced that too.
Yeah. Anyone not connected to the Clintons would have done probably 10, 20 years in a Haitian prison. She got, I think, 6 months.
Yep. Yeah, 6 months. And then we have, of course, Jeffrey Epstein. And without, going into the whole detail, because I think most of the world is very familiar with Jeffrey Epstein at this place, but we're talking 30 underage victims here that he basically was trafficking over to his mansion and off to his island. And they are incredibly connected with he is incredibly connected with the Clintons.
Bill Clinton had flown on the Lolita Express to that island, Little St. James, more than 20 times, I think 26 times if memory serves, and that's in the flight logs.
Oh, yeah, and escaped security detail on, I think, at least 5 occasions.
Yeah, you don't want your security detail witnessing you diddling little kids. So
Right. And then he gave, in 2006, he gave $50,000 to a political donation to Hillary Clinton. And
Epstein did.
Yes. And also he routed $25,000 from HSBC Swiss accounts directly to the Clinton Foundation in 2006. And that was while he was under indictment. So that's even more interesting, especially with the now defunct illegal plea deal that, is in the courts that they're trying to work out. And then we have, he also hosted a trip on his private jet in 2002 to Africa for the Clinton Global Initiative's anti-AIDS mission. And guess who was on there? Kevin Spacey, who's the next one up on my list. And he's got his hands full right now. He's dealing with multiple things. There's a case out in California going on against him. There's a case in Nantucket, Massachusetts, that isn't going to go to trial until fall because they're a little backlogged right now. And that was for a sexual assault of a teenager in a bar. And the one in California, there was one in California that ended up getting dropped because of statute of limitations. And there's another one, though, of, it started January 31st, listed as John Doe, a massage therapist, alleges that he repeatedly sexually assaulted him, and as well as battery charges. So that's still going on. And I don't know if everyone's seen this bizarre video, but I have that linked in here as well. Did you see that video that Spacey did?
Oh, yeah, in his kitchen?
Yeah, where he went into Voice from House of Cards.
Yeah, I think it was a veiled threat to those probably who know what they're all up to.
Yeah, it was.
He's trying to save his own hide, I think, and it didn't work.
Right. So, I mean, here's what's really interesting. Of all places, the New York Times published an article titled, well, I don't actually have the title, but basically they included, it was Spacey's bromance with Bill Clinton. So a lot of the information I actually extracted was straight from the New York Times, believe it or not. They've been friends for a long time. They go back to when Bill was president and Spacey visited him in the White House, and ever since then they stayed in touch, stayed friends. They do dinners, they go on trips. Spacey gets involved in some of the Clinton Foundation initiatives, and so he, of course, was on the plane with Epstein and Bill when they went to Africa on their alleged AIDS mission. And then we go down to Joel Getz, which is a name probably not many people are familiar with because this hit the news for about a minute. I don't know if you remember this one. He's the independent director of a chain of private kindergartens in China. He was a former Clinton Foundation official. And this is a really disturbing story. So there's a kindergarten in Beijing that basically went under investigation because children were being abused. They were giving them pills, little pills that they were telling them to call them jelly beans, and they were actually rewards, and some kind of brown syrup. And then the kids would either be locked in a room, or they would fall asleep. And some of them, their clothes were removed. And one of the parents said there was a naked adult man that was basically observing the small child as though he was doing an exam. So, sexual molestation was going on. And needles, there's like needle marks, or not like, I didn't get the impression that it was like injections, but who knows? It seemed more like they were, as a pain thing, they were like poking them with needles, because there was another kindergarten in China that also fell under claims of that with the needles. And there was a police investigation done, and they did say, yes, in fact, these are needle marks. So this guy, Joel Getz, it's very strange. And that he is a independent director of RYB. He is the only, they're all from China. He is the only Caucasian director, and he's also listed as a member of the Audit Committee and Compensation Committee, which is curious. So this guy, who I'm not sure if he still is till this day, I believe he might be, because I pulled up his bio on Yale and it was still there. So he is a associate dean at Yale. And prior to that, he was the director of development for the William J. Clinton Foundation in New York, and was president of the Mayor's Fund to Advance New York City, which I've done a little digging into. He also was on the board of advisors, because at one point he was on the board of advisors. I don't know if that was before or after him being the president. George Soros' sister-in-law, Daisy Soros, and Harvey Weinstein, who is dealing with, he's facing rape charges right now in an ongoing court case.
Right.
So, I mean, these people.
I wonder if we could find out if Getz went to Yale, and was he in Skull and Bones? It's interesting that he has that Yale connection. I just want people to realize, when you think of the horrors that probably were going on Epstein's Island, Little St. James, you're really talking about pits of hell kind of stuff. And people, I think, rightly wired people, Corey, are probably dismissing a lot of that just because it's too hard to imagine.
Right.
But as I've outlined in several videos in the past, Hostel, the movie Hostel, and Hostel 2, those movies are actually documentaries. These people get off on telling you in these fictional movies what they actually do in private, in the dark. And it's all measure of horrors. As we move on to this next guy on your list, Harold H.L. Moody, I bring up Little St. James and the horrors going on probably on Epstein's Island, because this guy was arrested for pornography charges involving live streaming chat rooms where infants were being raped.
Yes.
Folks, you can't make this up. And he's got a connection to the Democratic Party, Arkansas, and the Clintons.
Yeah, absolutely disgusting. If you go in and read the reports on him in depth, it was where the undercover officer that was working the case was, describing what she was having to witness and everything. It was just disgusting. So, and this guy worked for Pulaski County Youth Services in Little Rock, Arkansas. So he was just arrested in November of last year on the charges you just said. And what's interesting about this is I did a two-part, which I believe you covered, a two-part Arkansas Swamp article about all of the indictments going on in the cleaning out of the swamp in Arkansas.
Right.
And this guy is listed in there because Clinton Health Matters Initiative was running from a 5-year, from 2012 to 2017, they were running this initiative, and they worked with several different groups. And one of them was the Pulaski County Youth Services. And like you said, this guy also was a communications director for the Democratic Party of Arkansas for a year and a half, and chairman of the Pulaski Democratic Party for 2 years. So, and here he is, in a photo with Hillary. And I just want to say real quick, since we're on Arkansas, did you see that Jeremy Hutchinson, former Arkansas senator, was just indicted yesterday?
No.
12 counts of wire fraud and false tax returns. I've been waiting on this because he's listed in part 1 of my Swamp articles. And they had him, he was dealing in a court case on a totally separate issue that his attorneys have been working really hard at getting him out of. And then boom, they slap him with this one, 12 counts. And this is all tied in to the preferred family health care Medicare scam going on, where millions and millions of dollars were funneled out. And we've already seen, I want to say this is the 4th or 5th lawmaker now that's been indicted. One of them's already doing prison time. And so if people aren't familiar with that, I have a chart on there. I still have many missing names that we don't know of yet that are still to come.
There's so many sealed indictments. And I think the point needs to be made for people who still say nothing's happening, nothing will change. You guys have to remember this stuff unwinds slowly over time when investigations are done properly, according to the letter of the law, so that the cases aren't thrown out. These things take time. And I'll remind people that if the witch was in the White House, all of these people would still be protected. Mm-hmm. All of this stuff would still be covered up. And a DOJ plane would not have landed last August in Little Rock twice, removing all sorts of documents, boxes and boxes and boxes of documents. There's definitely things happening, and now we're seeing the arrests like the one you just mentioned that I didn't know anything about, Corey.
Yeah, a lot of indictments went down this week. It's been a busy week. So then we have George Nader, and this guy's flown under the radar for a very long time and recently came up into the news because of the Mueller investigation. He was questioned in the Mueller probe for consulting with the Trump administration. And so I start digging into this guy because I hear a little buzz about this guy being a pedophile. And sure enough, this guy worked for the Clinton administration.
Is he the guy who was indicted in 1985 for child pornography?
Oh, yeah, it's more than that. It was, so it actually began in, well, first let me just say this, just so people understand. This guy was born in Lebanon. He's this Middle East expert in analysis, and he has all these big political connections. So in 1981, he starts this magazine called, back then it was called International Insight, Inc., which later became Middle East Insight. So the magazine, just to put this in perspective, had original interviews with John McCain, Dianne Feinstein, Mitch McConnell, Joe Biden, George W. Bush, and Bill Clinton, all our favorite people. So he, and also Saudi Arabia's Prince, I always butcher this, Al-Walid bin Talal. Am I even coming close?
I think that's pretty good.
And I say that because that prince owns 111 Four Seasons resort hotels with Bill Gates across the world, which I discovered when I was doing my Shipwrecked article, which we can get into later. So
is that the same prince who was arrested and tortured along with a lot of other Saudi princes? I think that's the same guy, isn't it?
I believe so.
Yeah, these people are all neck deep in this stuff. And remind me before we end this call later, I want to scroll back up and remind people, because the name of your article is, Are Hillary and Bill Clinton Involved in Child Trafficking? We have to play that clip from, I think, NBC News about the cover-up of a U.S. ambassador who was gleefully involved in child trafficking and having sex with kids when Hillary was in charge at the State Department. And she covered it up. I reported about that when it happened in, I think, 2013, 2014, something like that. I've got a whole video dedicated to that. And these people are not only involved in it, they love to cover it up.
Right. And you know what's funny? When I put that clip in my Shipwrecked article, my Shipwreck article went so viral. I had like 25,000 hits the first day. And a couple weeks later, I go in and look, and I find out that video's down. They removed it. So I found it elsewhere, downloaded it. I now have it on my server. It's gold. So it's in this article.
Let me just, in the interest of, I brought it up, let's just play a little bit of that, because people need to understand that a U.S. ambassador was involved in using both prostitutes and minor children and the high-ranking official at the State Department directed investigators to cease the investigations into what this guy was up to. That's Hillary Clinton, folks. She was in charge at the State Department. Listen to this.
Over here, and we are following this breaking news out of Washington. Some serious allegations this morning facing the State Department.
That's right. According to internal State Department memos, the agency might have called off or intervened in investigation into possibly illegal and inappropriate behavior within its ranks, allegedly to protect jobs and avoid scandals. This concerns the time that Hillary Clinton was Secretary of State. We want to get right to NBC's chief White House correspondent, Chuck Todd, with the latest. Chuck, good morning to you.
Good morning, Savannah. You know, there's an old saying in Washington that the cover-up is worse than the crime. But in this case, both parts of it are disturbing. Allegations of prostitution and pedophilia, and allegations that those crimes were somehow covered up or not looked into. So the State Department this morning is having to respond to those claims and those investigations of misconduct by State Department officials, including by an ambassador and security agents attached to then Secretary of State Hillary Clinton. And the allegations are that these investigations were whitewashed, quashed altogether, and that those orders came from high up.
You know, I'll pause it there. Corey, it's so important what he just said there, what Chuck Todd just said there. Security detail tied to Clinton herself were involved in this stuff. Do you think for 1 minute that Hillary Clinton is not involved in this stuff directly? I mean, we've heard reports that on Weiner's laptop was video that would make a grown man cry. But it says right here in this report that her own security detail or people tied to her security detail were involved in this pedophilia while she was at the State Department.
Right, right. And we haven't even covered, we kind of skipped down right to Nixie, and we haven't even covered Weiner yet. So I'll have to go back up to him. But with George Nader, I just want to say something I find really interesting is that he comes in and does this exclusive interview with when Bill Clinton was president back in 95. So the issue published in 95, and I actually found it. It was saved in congressional records, so I have that link in here if anyone wants to see it. And then 4 months later, in April 1996, this tribute was made to Nader in his magazine in a congressional report, which also, for being this wonderful writer and editor and da-da-da-da-da. So to me, that's just a little pat on the back, handshake, pay to play stuff coming down the pike. So then, like you were saying, in 1985, he was importing child pornography from the Netherlands, and it contained 8mm movie films, magazines, and one of the magazines was called Boy Number 53. Another one, Sweet Little 16, Volume 3, Number 8, and pictures. And they basically contain nude boys and boys engaged in a variety of sexual acts. So U.S. Customs Inspector opens up this package, and the whole thing ends up getting dismissed. They ended up going in and seizing more material from his phone, but based on procedural grounds, it was all thrown out. So then in 91, he was caught at Dulles Airport in D.C. transporting videos of underage boys in sex acts dated 1990. And then he was convicted and sentenced to 6 months at a halfway house in Maryland. So then in the early 2000s, all of a sudden, this guy ups and leaves, shuts his magazine down. No one knows where he went, dissolves his business. His apartment in D.C. ends up getting, I don't know if it was legitimately foreclosed on, because this is really strange. A couple ends up moving in, throwing all of his stuff to the curb. This guy comes back in 2003, resurfaces, and takes them to court and ends up getting his apartment back. So I don't know how he managed that one. But what's interesting is in May 2003, he was sentenced to a 1-year prison term, and this is where it gets really disgusting, for sexually abusing 10 young boys between 1999 and 2002 in Prague. So he was convicted and sentenced, but then, there's some really nasty details to all of this. I won't go into all of it, but obviously he didn't serve the full year if he managed to get back to D.C. and win his apartment back.
Well, that's the thing. Here's a guy who gets caught at Dulles Airport for trafficking child pornography, transporting child pornography. He's been busted for sexually abusing 10 young boys in Prague, importing child pornography from the Netherlands in 1985. And what's he do? He does a year, 6 months in a halfway house. If this was anybody else who wasn't connected to powerful elite who are into child sex trafficking, he would be in prison for 20 years.
Right. And he gets out and comes straight to D.C. So between 93 and 2001, during the Clinton administration, this guy, because he's got big connections, he was trying to broker an Israeli-Syrian peace agreement, and worked with Estee Lauder hair, Ronald Lauder. Now, I don't think that agreement actually went through, but he served as an informal envoy to Syria for the Clinton administration, and worked as a negotiator to help free U.S. hostages in Lebanon. So very interesting there. And let me just scroll back up to
Weiner.
You know,
You're going to scroll back up to Anthony
Weiner or Weiner?
I think it's Anthony Weiner. And by the way, I don't know why his prison sentence got cut short. For what? Good behavior? I mean, again, anybody else who wasn't a connected person would be in prison for a lot more. What did he get, 18 months? He got a short.
And for sexting with a 15-year-old girl when his laptop contained 340,000 emails on it. Come on.
Yeah, and I just want to circle back. If you're going to go back to Weiner, let's cover whatever you wanted to cover there, whatever you're going to scroll up and tell us about. But I just want to remind people, as it pertains to the Podesta emails, you know, as it pertains to this guy, the one we were just talking about, George Nader. Nader flying back to D.C., D.C., always back to D.C. These people love D.C. At least they did when it was this hornet's nest of pedophiliacs, of child sex traffickers that Breitbart warned us about. You go back to those Podesta emails, and you think about the GQ magazine, where James Alefantis was named the 50th most powerful person in Washington, D.C., a pizza shop owner. Now, how does that make any sense, folks? It makes zero sense unless he's a connected person running in these same circles, which is what those emails from John Podesta that were leaked by Seth Rich to WikiLeaks indicate. They indicate a child sex trafficking network. And we just played the soundbite for you. When Hillary was at the State Department, she was covering up for people involved in child sex, including her own security detail. And James Alefantis, who was he previously married to, or his boyfriend was? David Brock. These people are deeply involved in the most nefarious things you can imagine. And thank God we have a Department of Justice, we have an AG right now, and somebody sitting in the White House who seems hell-bent upon doing something about it.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. You know, there's a few things, and I know some of this, some people are familiar with, but there's this one part I extracted out of this huge, I think it was a 528-page report by the OIG or the IG on this, this whole Weiner debacle laptop here. So I think most people are familiar with the part on page 294, which shows, you know, Anthony Weiner texting 15-year-olds, sexually explicit, yada, yada. Initial analysis of laptop, thousands of emails. Hillary Clinton and Foundation, crime against children. So there's 340,000 emails, and a significant amount of them are between Hillary and Huma. So we would assume, Huma and her husband, former New York Congressman Anthony Weiner, maybe shared the laptop a bit there, or he was collecting her emails through there. So they also released, the FBI released the document that I have here that also indicates Anthony Weiner, producers of child pornography. Now, producers is plural, and there's a box underneath that's been redacted. So we have no idea if that's a name, if that's a group of people, what the heck's, you know, there. But they're saying producers. So then we scroll down, and there's this, you know what, you have a better voice than me. Why don't you read it? The part where I have on page 303 of this report, the case agent being the only one that had the authority to release the laptop. Okay, so this guy is sitting there with this laptop with all of this information on it, and he's sitting around waiting for them to call him and come get this laptop and investigate. And so I thought this was really kind of key information here just to show the mindset of what was going on with those investigating this.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'll read this. You've got a great voice, but I'm happy to try to read this. On page 303 of this report, the case agent, being the only one that had the authority to release the laptop, stated his concerns over no one contacting him. He said, and I quote, "The crickets I was hearing was really making me uncomfortable because something was going to come crashing down. And my understanding, which is uninformed because I didn't work the Hillary Clinton matter, my understanding at the time was, I'm telling you people I have private Hillary Clinton emails, number one, and BlackBerry messages, number two. I'm telling you that we have potentially 10 times the volume that Director Comey said we had on the record. Why isn't anybody here? Like, if I'm the supervisor of any CI squad in Seattle and I hear about this, I'm getting on with headquarters and saying, hey, some agent working child porn here may have Hillary Clinton emails. Get your ass on the phone, call the case agent, and get a copy of that drive, because that's how you should be. And that nobody reached out to me within like that night, I still to this day, I don't understand what the hell went wrong. This poor guy, see, this is the problem with our government, at least as it pertains to the deep state. You get honest people like this guy trying to do his job, his jaw drops because he knows what he's got, and it all gets covered up.
Right. There's a lot of nuggets in this report. You know, if anyone wants to go in, I have it uploaded on my site in PDF so anyone can download it and scan through it. A lot of telling information in there. So
yeah, you guys go to corysdigs.com. The name of this article is, "Are Bill and Hillary Clinton involved with child trafficking?" Folks, the answer is yes. It's never been more clear. And thank God, seriously, I say this a lot. I say it when Liz Crokin is on too. Thank God Donald Trump beat the witch. They didn't have a backup plan. They tried to topple the president. That hasn't worked. And now they're all being exposed. The AG is talking about treason. The president is talking about treason as it pertains to these people. And all of these people involved in the attempted coup against President Trump, they all should be on death watch or suicide watch, because they know what danger they're in now for being tried for their crimes. And below them are all of these child sex trafficking networks. And there are actual arrests that are happening. I'll tell you what, we live in exciting times. I mean, really, if the witch had been in the White House, you and I and Liz Crokin and all the other truth tellers would have probably had to move to New Zealand or God knows where.
Right. Gone completely off grid somewhere. But I just want to add, because I know we're getting to the end of the time here, but I just want to add that the whole shipwrecked on 10 Islands with Clintons and Branson, okay? I just recently, about maybe 2 weeks ago, published part 4. That you could start at part 4 and then go back to part 1. It's really critical information, because I've been slowly building up this sort of investigation on what they're doing in the Caribbean. And they are working, and now they're up to 26 governments they're working with. And what started out as 10 islands with solar farms has now amassed into, they are taking over the whole tourism industry. They're going to be erecting these allegedly renewable energy sustainable infrastructures, which translates to hotel resorts in the child trafficking and drug trafficking transits that are rife with it. And there are 3 tiers. If you review the human trafficking report that our government just put together last year, it's quite large, and it's on my site here. So they have 3 tiers. 3 being the worst. Many of these islands are tier 2 for human trafficking, and that means that they start being restricted on aid they get from us. Tier 3 is the absolute worst. So many of these islands are tier 2s, a few of them are tier 3s. We've now got George Soros, Bill Gates, Zuckerberg, Jeff Bezos. There's, oh my God, the government of Canada, the Norwegian government, tons of organizations and companies are involved in this. And it's been building. It started back in 2012. And like I said, it started with the solar farms. Now they've moved into the whole tourism industry. They have all these coalitions formed together. And just this year kicked off yet another one. So I'm keeping my eyes on this. And I'm wondering if our government is as well, because I indicated at the end of part 4, just a couple weeks ago, Trump met with 5 island nation leaders. And in fact, the president of Haiti, Havenel Moise, was there, and that was a hard one for me to watch because that man should be in jail right now. So then, just yesterday, in fact, let's see, it's today. Oh no, 2 days ago, on the 10th, they put out this press release where they are meeting with. I mean, we're talking a lot of people from our within our government agencies here, meeting with 18 of. Oh, I'm sorry. They're actually meeting in Miami, Florida. So yesterday and today is when the meeting took place. So the press release was put out on April 10th. So they're meeting with 18 countries in the Caribbean. And, what's curious is, although all of the islands on here are ones that these folks are, I'm just going to call it taking over. Oh, no, I'm sorry. Haiti is listed in here. Sorry, they're listed in there. Mm-hmm. But we're talking senior officials from U.S. Southern Command, USAID, the Federal Emergency Management Agency, Federal Aviation Administration, Federal Communications Commission, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, the Department of Energy, the Inter-American Foundation, and the U.S. Geological Survey will all be participating in this. That is supposed to be this coalition they're forming called the Resilience Partnership. And they want the Caribbean to know that the United States has reaffirming their strong commitment. So I just can't help but wonder, with everything I've been investigating and reporting on this, and just the timing of all of this, do they know everything that I know? God, I hope so. And are they having any of these discussions with these folks about what these, the Soros and the Clintons and the Bransons and the Gates and what they're all up to over there? I don't know, but I sure hope so, because honestly, the more they crack down and do busts on the trafficking taking place over here, and the more border wall they build, the more difficult it is to traffic them in. Let's fly the millionaires and billionaires over here where it's already rife and set them up. And we already know that they traffic them to right into the hotels. I mean, even Polaris, who they're partnered with, has that on their website. So I hope that has a little something to do with, because in the 2 years I've been following this, I've not seen anything between our government and the Caribbean until just now.
I think they do know. I think that things are being done. And I guess I'll just leave people with this. We don't know exactly what the level of investigation is internationally going on, but here, at least domestically, we know that Representative Steve Scalise made a PSA about human trafficking. Now, Corey, if you go back to 2008, 2010, 2012, I wasn't aware of what Breitbart was aware of. I didn't know the level to which these people were involved in sick, nefarious things like child sex trafficking. And I didn't actually realize what a big problem human trafficking was, as Steve Scalise says in this spot, in every single major city across the country. I'll play the spot. And while you're listening to this, guys, you need to remember that shortly after Steve Scalise made this PSA, there was an attempt made on his life. He was shot at a softball game in Virginia, I believe, or D.C. And the would-be assassin, fortunately, didn't succeed, but almost took Scalise's life. You think these deep state monsters don't play seriously when they know they're being threatened? When their whole infrastructure is being threatened of being taken down and exposed? Listen to this. Here's Steve Scalise.
One of America's greatest values is our strong belief in the inherent worth of every human life. Human trafficking is a direct assault on this core value, and it affects millions of victims throughout the world. While many of us would like to believe that this issue isn't something that affects us, the sad truth is that human trafficking is a real problem plaguing each and every community here in the United States. Enough is enough.
Enough is enough. They tried to kill this man after he made this PSA, Corey.
Well, it's a $150 billion industry. These people don't take that lightly.
No. Corey, like I said at the beginning of this call, you do such great work. Your articles are so comprehensive. I didn't know where to begin, but I think this was a pretty good first effort in documenting the fact that there are very well-connected people to the Clintons who have been involved in pedophilia and child trafficking, and who seem to get away with it time and time again. And I think you've done a good job answering the question you ask. Are the Clintons involved in sex trafficking and child trafficking? The answer appears to be yes.
Yeah, I agree. It's hard to deny at this point.
All right. Well, hopefully the Clintons will be brought to justice along with Soros and all the other deep state traders. Corey, just remind people how they can find your work, how they find your website.
Sure. So Corey'sDigs.com, which is Corey'sDigs. And I'm also on Twitter, Corey's Digs, and I'm also on YouTube, though I tend to post more interviews and discussions than I make my videos because I spend so much time researching. And you can find me on, I'm on Patreon as well.
Great. Well, you do such a great job, and you are very active on Twitter, so people should follow you there. How do they do that? Is it at Corey's Digs on Twitter?
Yes, at Corey's Digs.
Very good. And guys, you can follow me on Twitter too, at SGT Report. Corey, thanks so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Sean. It was good being here.
Yeah, good to have you. Love your work. All right, guys, thank you so much for tuning in. You know how much we appreciate you, and I appreciate my patrons as well. Thank you so much for keeping me in the fight for truth, even while YouTube and Google changed the rules in the middle of the game. You can see what they're doing to my channel, guys. My interview with Jim Willey capped out at about 60,000 views. That's a real puzzler. It was a pretty good interview, and he's a good guy. We'll see how this one does, Corey. But ever since YouTube changed their algos on January 22nd, I've seen some shocking statistics on my YouTube channel. Like, for instance, throughout the year of 2018, I was picking up between 25 and 35,000 new subscribers a month. That number in the last 30 days has fallen to below 3,000 new subscribers.
Wow.
It's just a bitter pill when YouTube and Google changed the rules in the middle of the game, and we realize it's no longer a level playing field. But we'll keep fighting. And guys, for Real News 24/7, you can find me every single day at sgtreport.com. Check out thephaser.com, where I hand select really interesting videos you may otherwise miss, and thelibertymill.com. That's Real News 24/7, the antidote to corporate propaganda, guys. Thanks so much for tuning in. We love you. Bye-bye.
Why was QE set up in 2012 but to prevent a treasury bond default? It wasn't for financial stimulus. It was for intensive care for the treasury bond and permanent welfare for Wall Street banks.